Today we're reacting to Sportsnet discussing the constant line changes and how that impacts Auston Matthews. Chemistry matters, even for superstars. And this has been a big talking point. Make sure to like and subscribe for more Leafs reacts.
First and a second that turns into a first
if they win the Stanley Cup. Okay.
And a kid, a defenseman, or another asset.
I think
Abram Weeb.
Yeah, okay.
That is the most creative player name I've ever heard. Abram Weeb
is the prospect's name. Not even a prospect. He's like 27 or something, isn't he?
UND.
No disrespect to the guy. I just don't know who he is. That's all. I don't know.
This sounded more like a shift of contracts than it does an actual player that is going to help us win the Stanley Cup.
White Cloud, and a second that can become a first.
22?
Now,
yeah.
Okay.
Now, White Cloud also could become a first at the deadline. Cheap deal, valuable defender, right shot, big guy, tough.
Yeah,
good contract.
I think they've got a few options there. All right, let's welcome in Frank Saravelli. Been on the show before, of course, NHL Insider, host of Frankly Speaking on Victory Plus. Frank, how are you, buddy?
Pretty good. How are you guys doing?
You getting all your work done early before the trade deadline in March? We just mentioned about maybe an artificial trade deadline coming up here before the Olympics. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of teams that would like to get some of their work done before then, particularly in guys that they could move out. Now, the push and pull is that with the Olympics coming up and obviously some high leverage hockey there, that you're going to be dealing with injuries. And so I'm wondering if we see a flurry on the back end of it from the Olympic sprint and gold medal game wrapping up right to March 6th with the deadline, that teams are going to have to reevaluate positions based on needs and what's coming out of the Olympics.
So the Anderson deal finally gets done. What did you think of the return? Was there anything similar out there, or was this clearly the best of the bunch?
I think this was the best of the situation, really, and it's not the best of the bunch. I believe the Boston Bruins put a better offer on the table, and in fact, probably one that the Calgary Flames would have preferred. But in the end, the unwillingness from the Anderson camp to sign an extension with anyone at this point in time. The Boston Bruins backed out at that point. Other teams that had tried to get in the mix, I believe the Los Angeles Kings were another one that he did not entertain a contract negotiation with, that certain teams had to either lessen their offer or were out completely, leaving one team left standing with the goods to make a deal.
It feels like Matthews never gets the same line mates for long. One game it works, the next game everything changes again. That makes it hard for any line to really settle in.
And that's a team with maybe the most different risk profile of any in the NHL, and that's the Vegas Golden Knights.
And so is he going to re-sign there? Sorry, Kip, to jump in, but
same question.
You get the vibe that will happen?
Yeah, I think that's the expectation. I mean, a lot of people have viewed this as a fait accompli, maybe even to a certain extent, that with the Boston Bruins, was all of this a smokescreen? Was this really the preferred destination all along? And how did they manage the situation and the messaging to get him to Vegas to then now turn around? And the expectation is $64 million on the open market. Well, can he sign for a number that's the equivalent of that in Vegas on a long-term deal? I think that's what everyone's looking for.
And if you look at the history of Kelly McCrimmon and George McPhee, like whether it's Eichel or Hannafin, they don't make these moves without getting their guy. I'm not saying it's done. I'm not saying it's in a drawer, but come on, they have to have something in some type of an agreement of where that number is, and we can get it done.
I agree with you, Kipper. I think when you look at this situation, I mean, that's why their risk profile is the way that it is, because they have the confidence that even if Rasmus Anderson was unsure about the nature of coming to Vegas, which I think he was pretty set on, the idea that you'll come here and like it is probably a pretty strong one. I don't know, maybe for everyone except for Mitch Marner.
So I'm just going to gloss over that. Boston Bruins, then, they don't get him. But that's interesting enough that they were willing to part with what seemed like significant assets for a guy. So they are a team that, I don't want to say going for it, but we expect the Bruins to make other moves then to get someone.
Well, I don't know if get someone is the line of thinking for the Boston Bruins, in the sense that we were talking about the premier rental defenseman available in Anderson. And the reason why the Bruins were so interested is because they didn't want to let him be a rental. They wanted to acquire a player with term attached to him. And the only way to do that in their case is now to trade for someone with term or get an extension done. And I think part of the reason for that is this season has been up, down, and all over the place for the Bruins. They were really good for a stretch of time. They've been really poor for a stretch of time. They've been sort of teetering on the edge of this mess that is the Eastern Conference standings. They're trying to figure out exactly what they are. Are we a team that is going to be, pushing closer toward being aggressive? Should we sit back?
You can sometimes see Matthews' frustration. Even if he doesn't say much, he still produces, but it feels like things could be smoother with more consistency around him.
Or what is our posture moving forward? And that's really what they've been trying to figure out.
So, Frank, we assume that with the Calgary trade to Vegas for Rasmus, there's a lot of things that you worry about if you're Calgary, and that includes an injury to what was regarded as maybe the number one trade chip, I think, on most trade boards, right? And the Olympics coming up, and if he gets hurt, you lose a ton here. But Kiefer Sherwood isn't going to the Olympics last time I checked. What was Vegas's rush to move him to San Jose now? Vancouver, sorry. Vancouver's rush to trade him to San Jose. This one kind of, I don't know, doesn't bother me, but I'm like, shop him around, like get the price up, get some bidding wars, because this guy was a sought-after piece as well.
Well, they did do that, and that's been ongoing for the last 4 to 5 weeks now. I mean, essentially really coming out of the holidays, particularly right after New Year's, the Canucks and Sherwood's camp had engaged in talks again. Hey, just double checking to see if we're close on an extension, and they weren't. And so since then, they've been making a really concerted effort. They had presented to teams like they were pretty close on making a deal, I'd say upwards of 10 days ago. It was essentially, for a long time, it was first team to put a first-round pick on the table gets Kiefer Sherwood, and they didn't get that to materialize, so they landed with the San Jose Sharks and 2 second-round picks, plus a player to make the 50 contract limit work for San Jose. And there were a couple things that teams were concerned about. I reported 10 days ago that the teams in the mix for Sherwood were Dallas, Anaheim, Boston, well, the Rangers, not anymore, and San Jose. So in this case, some teams were concerned about shooting percentage uptick, and is the results that we've seen from Sherwood, can he replicate those again? And then the other part of it, connected to it, was the next contract for Kiefer Sherwood. He's not exactly a young UFA. And so when you look at the market and how it's developed, teams have ballparked somewhere around 5 or 6 years north of $5 million per year. And there were a number of teams that could have used the player. I think New Jersey was one of those teams. I think at a certain point, Montreal was considering potentially dipping their toe in the Kiefer Sherwood sweepstakes, but they didn't or weren't comfortable with paying the contract on the back end of it, which is why you see a team like San Jose enter. They give up the 2 second-round picks, and in exchange, I think we're all expecting at some point in time, they don't have one in place now, but to work on a contract extension for Kiefer Sherwood to make him part of the fabric of their team moving forward.
Matthews is elite, but even elite players benefit from stability. Constant changes might help short-term, but long-term chemistry matters more. If you liked this discussion, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and share what you think about the Leafs' buying decisions.